Shannon Walker, and I am the founder and CEO of Northwest Battle Buddies.
Can you tell me a little bit about your dog training journey?
Well, my dog training journey is a long one because I've been doing it for 30 years, but
Yes.
I could give you the Cliff Note version. So I started training dogs, like I just said, almost 30 years ago, and it became a profession. So I had a German Shepherd dog that needed to be trained. And the man I ended up marrying was kind of not a dog guy. The marriage didn't last, so surprise. But anyway, so when I had this German Shepherd at about 8 months old, he's like, get him trained or get rid of him. Well, that wasn't an option. So as far as getting rid of him. So, I sought out trainers just like everybody does. And I was so blessed to be introduced to um, Gene England and some amazing men in the dog training world. But they introduced me to the sport of Schutzhund, which Schutzhund is a protection sport out of Europe, much like police dog training. And so I fell in love with that. And I was like, I wanted to compete. Didn't know what it was going to take, but literally I ended up competing for 10 years. Won some trophies, did some big things. But it was such a blessing because it started out of a need for a love for my own personal dog. But I ended up getting married and had twin boys and quickly realized I had to make money myself. And so people would see me in the park training my own dog, and they would come up and they would ask for help. And my dad always said, you don't know what you don't know. And I will tell you, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing, because when I started, working with my own dog, I knew more than I knew yesterday. So surely I can help you. And I did. I ended up thinking, if I can train 4 dogs a month, then I could be a stay-at-home mom. I can help support the family, and I can put my own values in my children instead of having them literally raised by somebody else. Now, I know that a lot of women have to do that, but that isn't a route that I wanted for me and my children. And then I ended up building a business. My for-profit business, Man's Best Friend, ended up just being this incredible blessing because I was able to, even when I became a single mom, I lacked nothing to be able to provide for my boys. And I was still able to be a stay at home mom and all that. So that was a tremendous blessing. And so that was the beginning of my dog training world. And then 13 years ago, I met a veteran who was struggling and wanted his dog to be trained to be a service dog. It was a veteran with PTSD, and he came looking for help. And that was my first introduction to what our veterans are battling in PTSD. But I trained a service dog for him to mitigate the disabilities of PTSD. And it actually sparked the journey of Northwest Battle Buddies. I founded Northwest Battle Buddies 13 years ago. And at Northwest Battle Buddies, we professionally train and we gift service dogs to veterans battling PTSD. And in the last 13 years, we've gifted 257 service dogs, and
Wow.
we have not lost one veteran to suicide. So this is a modality. This is an option for our veterans, that for the veterans that come through our program, this is working for their lives, for their family, and for their community. And it's an incredible honor to do that. So that, in a nutshell, that's kind of like the trajectory. And it's just, for me right now, it's like all things dogs, and out of everything I've ever done, providing service dogs to veterans is absolutely one of the most fulfilling life purposes that I could have ever dreamed to have, being the dog lover that I am ever since I was little. And so I'm excited to share it. It's great. Thank you so much, Michael, for the opportunity.
Yeah, with Northwest Battle Buddies, what was it like to having that one idea to help someone become an organization that helps
Yeah.
way more veterans?
Yeah. So, what a great question. So, just to back up for a second, it's like the whole journey and the why of Northwest Battle Buddies. So my dad served during the Korean War, and he taught me to believe in God, family, and country. And when you're in the presence of a veteran, you're in the presence of a hero, even though he never considered himself one. I would watch my father shake the hand of a veteran and thank them for their service, but be incredibly nervous when somebody thanked him. I watched my dad, and I grew up in just the most amazing family. I had an incredible childhood. My mother was always a soft place to land, stay at home mom, very warm and loving. But my dad, he drove the Stanford. And I would watch my dad in we grew up in a cowboy town, and during rodeos, they're the most patriotic, wonderful events. And during the national anthem, my dad would have his hand over his heart, and he always had a tear in his eye and a quivering chin because he felt it. And so people always ask me, did my dad teach me, the patriotism? It's like he modeled it. I just watched him and I learned, but I adopted his love for our veterans and our freedom. And my dad always taught us that freedom wasn't free. But I never really knew what that meant until I met my first veteran. And I still don't know completely what it means, but I have a better idea. So really quickly, when Kevin, who was the first veteran that we served, came into my business, he just was like any other client that wanted, he just happened to want his dog trained to be a service dog to serve him with PTSD. So I did what I do. I assessed the dog. She had temperament enough. She was young enough, all of that. And so I just did what I do. I took her for months of training, but then when it was time for him to come in and train, that's when it started to change for me. Because number one, I learned about the suicide rate among our American heroes. I learned that he was a front gunner in the Army. So he had been self-medicating for years prior to meeting me with illegal drugs. By the time he came to me, he was clean and he was heavily involved in the VA. And it was the VA that recommended he come. And even though the VA doesn't pay for the dogs, they still recommend that they come get one because the counselors and the doctors, they know this works for veterans that can find a quality organization. But I learned one of the things that Kevin was telling me is not only, you know, his journey of dealing with suicidal ideations and self-medicating, but his last firefight when he was serving as a front gunner in the Army, the men out of his unit that had come home, that had survived that firefight, 6 of them had committed suicide on American soil. And I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. My dad always taught me that freedom wasn't free, but I didn't realize that the men and women that served our country, that even though they're not putting the uniform on, they are still paying a price for my freedom and your freedom. Everybody that's listening, there's been a price paid, but I didn't have to personally pay it. So I watched Kevin through the training. But once his dog Sammy was ready and it was time to start his training, I saw, this is where it changed for me. I saw Kevin find courage inside himself to go places. Because of Sammy, I saw him find courage to go places he was afraid to go alone. I saw him find courage to go with his service dog. And I saw him find courage to do things for her that he wouldn't do for himself. And then he just opened up and I saw walls come down and I just saw him transform with a service dog at his side. And in the very last session, he had finished his testing and I was watching him walk away. And his head was up and his shoulders were back and I was watching him walk with Sammy at his side. I truly felt like I significantly made the difference in the quality of somebody's life. I've accomplished a lot of things in the dog world. I have the honor of working with the police departments. I help them get their police dogs, their street dogs ready for the street. I have the honor of doing that. I've competed in Europe against 13 countries and won. I've stood on the podiums and I've helped thousands of pet families. But there was nothing that compared to that moment for me when I watched Kevin walk away. And so fast forward a few weeks, and I had people starting to come to my business. I had veterans coming to me who had met Kevin and they were looking for what Kevin had and they wanted dogs. And I didn't have dogs to give them. And in my simple-minded thinking, I thought, if I can just adopt dogs out of shelters, I can train them and I can gift them and I can say thank you for my freedom. And that was 257 service dogs ago. I had no idea, because then I was like, well, surely, how do you do this? So I started a nonprofit, didn't know how I was going to do that. I started to develop a team and I just thought, surely people will pay for this. I had no idea the struggle and how hard it was going to be. But I also had no idea how purposeful it would be, and the lives that I would come into contact with Northwest Battle Buddies that would be changed forever. And it's an honor, and I'm really blessed because I've taken my passion and I've turned it into my purpose in the dog world, and we're able to target it and niche it down where the service dogs are concerned for veterans. And it's amazing. It's like I could talk about it all day. It's an amazing journey. It's an amazing thing to watch, and we have the honor of walking out our veterans' walk of freedom at their side with a service dog. And it's just amazing.
I've talked to a lot of veterans, and they always bring up, the challenges of going back to civilian life.
Yeah.
With a service dog, how important is it to have a support system right away when you go back to civilian life?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of modalities. There's a lot of options for veterans that are battling PTSD. And some are more effective than others. And some I don't know if they're effective at all. But, the veterans will tell you, service dogs are a piece of medical equipment, no different than a prosthetic for an amputee, no different for somebody who is needing a wheelchair, a walker, or a cane. But unfortunately, often service dogs are not seen with the same effectiveness or the same, because people so often talk about how the dogs make them feel, and we talk, and that's all very valid. Our veterans feel safer. I mean, it's like the love, the affection, the walls come down. Veterans who don't trust people, but they'll trust a dog. You know, but what truly matters is that, to answer your question, is that, when veterans come back, they are looking for help, and medications are more readily available. There are other things that are more readily available because a service dog costs $25,000. Now we
Wow.
gift it. It doesn't. Our service dogs are free to our veterans. They have paid a price for our freedom, and we serve them, and we charge our veterans nothing. So we seek out help from the American people. We're a very Northwest Battle Buddies is a very grassroots organization that, we have all kinds. I didn't know when I started Northwest Battle Buddies that I was going to become a professional fundraiser. To where I'm just trying to pay for these dogs. We have a waiting list of 140 veterans that are on our waiting list waiting for a service dog. And last year we gifted like 43 service dogs. And that may not sound like a high number, but there's a lot of organizations that gift less than 10 or 5 a year. And and that's all very significant to the lives that are touched, but the need is great. And so veterans, when they come out of service, a lot of them aren't even diagnosed yet because in service, they don't want to let people know they have PTSD. They're going to hide it because they don't want, there's a stigma around it, and they don't want to be limited if they are still in. But once they come out, there's tremendous denial and there's tremendous finding ways to cope. And a lot of veterans don't even realize because they're in it, they don't really realize what's happening to them. But often it's their loved ones that are seeing their struggle because veterans want to isolate. They're hyper vigilant, they're stressed, they have panic attacks, they can't sleep, they have nightmares. And it becomes their normal. Even though it's a prison, they're like this in this prison. It's invisible wounds of war. And people look at our veterans and say, well, even our veterans that have service dogs. And they're like, well, you look fine. What's wrong with you? How would you like to be able to have to go out and live your life? You've got your piece of medical equipment at your side that enables you to go in and get milk for the family. It's like just to go get milk and come out for some of our veterans is a monumental task. Those of us that don't deal with PTSD and aren't dealing with invisible wounds of war, we don't even think about it. We just live our life. We go to the store when we can fit it in our day, and it's an
Yeah.
inconvenience, but we go do it. When a veteran needs to go to the grocery store, they're like, okay, how many people? Is it in the middle of the night? I just want to go in. I want to go out. How fast can I do it? Some of our veterans are like, they want to do the shopping, but they can't handle more than 3 things on the list. If the wife asks, or a loved one asks for more than 3 things, I can't do it. It's like these are the obstacles they live with. It's like they're staying at home. They're not enjoying. They're not making memories with their children. They're hearing about it because they're isolated. But with a service dog at their side, they have social mobility. They can walk into a store. We have veterans. So we are in the process right now of working with 14 veterans. They are in week 3. So really quick, we train our dogs for 5 months professionally before the veteran even meets their dog. Then we specifically match these dogs to our veterans based on age, lifestyle, physical ability, energy level of the dog, energy level of the veteran. We take everything into account and we specifically match these dogs. So veterans come from across the nation. We're in 28 states and 5 different countries, I believe now. And we have 14 veterans right here on the ground. And in a half hour, they're going to be outside our door on our site, getting ready to start week 3 because they trained for 5 weeks and 5 days a week, learning how to navigate life, passing their testing, and then their service dogs are gifted. And tonight they actually start their overnights. They get to start taking the dogs overnight throughout the next 3 weeks that they have, and they get to have their dog on their own. And sometimes our dogs are waking our veterans up from the very first overnight during a night terror, helping them bring them back to the moment and now. I mean, it's amazing how these dogs start serving their veterans immediately. In fact, one of our veterans last night, because of his schedule, had his first overnight last night, and I got the report. He reported he was in a restaurant eating by himself, which he never does. It's his first overnight with his service dog. He downed her under the table. He received compliments about how well she was trained. He read a book. He felt safer and had less anxiety than ever before. And this is a man that just wants to live his life as the courageous American hero that he is. And he's learning how to do it with a service dog. But when a veteran walks into a restaurant with a service dog, people look and wonder what's going on. But if he walked in with a cane, people wouldn't even pay attention. If he walked in a wheelchair, they wouldn't even pay attention. But the fact is that he's walking in with this piece of medical equipment. It creates all these questions. That's why education is so important. That's why a show like this is so important. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit what our veterans deal with. So once they finally get out there with their service dog, then they have to deal with the scrutiny and the lack of knowledge from the American people learning about invisible wounds of war. And so it's just incredible. It's, your I asked when we started this, I'm like, how long is the podcast going to be? And you're like, we could talk for 8 hours. And after listening to you for 2 minutes, you're like, she really could talk for 8 hours, I'm sure. But there's a
Yes,
lot.
I that thought has come up, but that's good. I'm learning a lot as well of these relationships. How does it feel for you to see these relationships grow and hear about it, months, years later?
That's a great question. It's the fuel in our fire. I mean, it's like, so anytime you do anything that is purposeful, you're growing an organization or you're doing anything that is impactful, greater than you as a person and long lasting, because it's about legacy. I founded Northwest Battle Buddies not for my father as a veteran, but because of what my father. I believe legacy isn't just what you leave, the things you leave for people, it's what you leave in somebody. And what my father left in me is what created the call to action for me to do what I'm doing for veterans. And when you create something great or anything great is happening, I in with our teams, I call it the backside of the blessing. The blessing is getting a text message like I did from the veteran that was out for the first time with a service dog, and the profound aha moments he was having about the way he was feeling, the courage he had, the peace of mind he had, the security, and now the ability with this piece of medical equipment, the service dog, what it was allowing to do, the social mobility that it was allowing to do. And I will tell you that our dogs are also trained, and our veterans are trained, that when they are in public and they're stressing or they start to have a panic attack, how to use that dog in a way that will lower their heart rate, lower their breathing, bring them back to the moment now so they can finish the mission. And the mission might be going in and getting milk, but instead of going into fight or flight, which is what happens in a panic attack. It's like it can overwhelm them to where they just exit for another day. I'm going to have to do that another day. But when I hear the stories, when I hear the victories, when I hear the wins, when I have a wife comes up and she says, now I didn't save anybody. All we did was create an avenue and a vehicle and educate. And we took our gifts and our talents and we created an avenue with a service dog that veterans can find a way to fight for their freedom. Now that they're home, they're fighting for their freedom because of invisible wounds of war. But when I have a wife come up and say, thank you for saving my husband, when I have a daughter come up and say, thank you for saving my dad, I didn't save anybody. We provided an opportunity for these brave men and women to find a way to fight for their freedom. We brought this. But it's like, those are the stories. Those, when we hear veterans, we had one veteran in an interview, the interviewers asked him, they said, so do you sleep better with your service dog? And he says, I can't say I sleep better. And I was like, what do you mean you don't sleep better? He says, but I'm not afraid to go to sleep.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. He says, because Atlas, his service dog, always wakes him up before the nightmare gets too bad. And I was like, what would it be like to live and be afraid to go to sleep? I go to sleep and I thank God I'm in my bed. And I'm like, it's one of my favorite parts of my day. And he has to have rest to thrive, but he's afraid to go to sleep. Now he's less afraid. And it's those type of things that I'm just like, so to answer your question, how does it feel to hear these stories? It is fuel in our tank, because the backside of the blessing is we're having to fight the ignorance in public. We're having to educate our veterans. And sometimes, when we have veterans out there for 10 years, they might have bumps in the road, and we have to help them through it. And life doesn't all of a sudden get easy because they have a service dog. They just have a tool to get through it.
Yeah.
Or what if they lose their service dog and their service dog passes away? How we serve them immediately and help them over that, and make sure they're not alone, and make sure that, there's all of these things that we have to do. But the fact is, I wouldn't change it for the world. And hearing the stories, hearing when people come alongside and they do donate money, or they do third-party fundraisers, and companies rally their employees, and they do a huge fundraiser in their business, and we get to go, receive and bring our veterans and speak and do all that and create awareness and education. It's just unbelievable. But it all starts with a story. It all starts with a success story. And when we hear about that, it just makes me, when I hear about the success stories of our veterans, it makes me more driven, more focused, more purposeful. My entire team, it just is like, we got to keep on keeping on at the highest level, serving our veterans as fast as we can, because we have a suicide rate of 22 a day, and we have about 140 veterans waiting to receive hope and healing on the end of a leash.
Yeah. What you said earlier really stuck with me, is the veterans you've helped give service dogs, none of them have died by suicide. That, I know you don't like taking credit, I could tell, but that's huge. You are saving lives.
We are saving lives. I've always, in the organization, I've always been like, because, you're always going to, okay, first of all, I'm not politically correct, just so you know. So brace yourself. No, but the fact is that if you make a statement like service dogs save lives, you're going to always have somebody that says, no, they don't, because I know blah, blah, blah. So I say, our service dogs change lives, but there's not one of our veterans out of 257 that would not tell you, this service dog saved my life. Mm-hmm. There's not one of them that won't tell you. And this is the reason, is because our service dogs are there in the midnight hour when nobody else is. I was talking about receiving a text message like last night, when the veteran went to a restaurant by himself to eat. To us, we're like, what's the big deal? That was huge for him. That was huge, because that's something he would have not done. Our veterans are breaking barriers with our service dogs. But we got a text message comes to mind based on that question or the statement you just had. And it was from Jordan. And we get a text message that says, because of Talon, his service dog, I'm enjoying another sunrise. He said, last night, my broken brain decided to end it. And he was all by himself in the midnight hour, sitting on the floor with a box cutter. And he was crying uncontrollably, lost in the moment. And as he said, his broken brain decided to end it. But his dog was relentless in pawing him and licking his face and trying to break him out of that moment. And when the dog finally broke him out of the moment, Jordan looked at him and saw his dog, and saw the look on the dog's face, and saw the dog's efforts. And instead of reaching for the box cutter, he reached for his camera and he took a picture of his dog, because he wanted to remember that moment. And he says, because of Talon, I'm enjoying another sunrise. And that was 1.5 years ago. And they are still enjoying sunrises together now. But the fact is that it's in the midnight hour, when our veterans are all alone, that this is happening. Well, they're not alone when they have a service dog at their side. And Talon did do his job. And he did save Jordan. And I will tell you, I've been a dog trainer for 30 years. I've seen lots of expressions on dogs' faces, but I've never seen an expression on the face of a dog like I did Talon. When he took that picture, the expression on that dog's face was unlike anything I'd ever seen. And it still brings me to tears when I think about it, because that's really what it's all about, is our dogs are there in the midnight hour. And, The Department of Defense will report that 1.5 lives are lost a day in combat. It's tragic. 22 veterans. And then the Department of Veteran Affairs, a few years ago when I did my TED Talk, they said that 20 veterans a day were taking their lives on American soil. Well, I don't care if it's one, it's too much. But the
Right.
fact is we are in double digits. And we talk about the suicide rate, but what it is, it's a death toll. It's a death toll of our American heroes taking their own lives in America. It puts, for me, I just thought about this the other day when I was just contemplating the statistics and messaging and everything else. And it's like, we talk about a suicide rate, but it literally is a death toll. Because
Mhm.
tomorrow, 22 families will be planning funerals. We don't think, it's like, to us, if you're not experiencing it, it's a number. If you're experiencing it, it's a reality. And as fathers and mothers lost, it's sons and daughters, and it's and it brings it home. It just brings it home. So anyway, um, yeah, it's we are saving lives. We are saving lives. The Northwest Battle Base team is amazing, and they are full of dedicated people that just don't know how to quit. But that's very uh, it's very much in sync with our veterans who are battling PTSD that refuse to quit, and those are the veterans we serve.
So you do a lot to help other people's mental health, but what do you do to help your own mental health?
Oh wow, that's a great. You know what? I'm a Christian, number one, and mental health and everybody has trauma, and overcoming it and being your best self and emotional and mental healing is very important. But when it all comes down to what I exactly do on this earth, when I say on this earth, is because I'm a Christian and I pray, but sometimes you need something in your hands.
Mm.
When I am super stressed through the different stages of my life and I've had a really tough day, I find my peace in a field with a dog, working a dog, being in the moment of now. Absolutely. Because that's the thing about dogs. They're so amazing. They live in the moment of now. They don't, humans are the only ones that live in the past, And so when you're with the dog and you're experiencing that moment, the dog is literally in that moment. And I ground myself with a dog, or sometimes it's either training a dog in a field, or when I come into my home, I own an English lab and I own a German Shepherd dog. And when I come in, having them on me, just feeling their body, being totally just immersed in all of their everything. I have to have a dog. They fill my love bucket. And it's like when I have to leave town for a few days, and yes, I have a great family, I just can't wait to get back to my dogs. And my family understands that. But the fact is that I find solace with my dogs. I find solace in working a dog because of the beauty of the connection of it's incredible. And so I can relate to our veterans in that way. I'm not going to say I know what they feel like, but I can relate. When I work with police officers who have lost their dog in the line of duty, I can relate. I get it, because there's something that happens that is a intimacy with a dog and a human when the relationship is right, that is, in my opinion, unmatched on this earth, and it's completely different than human connection. And it's very beautiful, and that's where I find uh, it grounds me and it brings me peace in the midnight hour. Through the death of my father, visiting my father's grave, going through my divorce, being a single mom with twins, you can't tell your kids what you're going through. So I find comfort in the dogs that I had, and every relationship I've ever had a dog with was equally as powerful as the next. Even though I've had many dogs, they truly are a gift, and I involve myself in that gift at the highest level. That they bring me so much joy, so much peace, so much comfort, so much beauty, and they teach me. And I'm so happy for the connection of the human dog relationship.
Where do you want to see Northwest Battle Buddies in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, first of all, we need the help of the American people, and Anybody can go to northwestbattlebuddies.org and help us. But what we need is, number one, I want to see a waiting list. Right now, we have a waiting list of like 140 veterans. I want to see a waiting list that is at zero. A
Yeah.
veteran that finds courage, a veteran that finds courage to call and actually ask for help. I want them to add to. I want to be able to immediately serve them. Imagine what it is to be battling PTSD. You're isolated. You're dealing with suicidal ideations, and you call an organization. You finally find courage to ask for help, and now it's like, well, it's maybe a year and a half or 2 year waiting list or 3 year waiting list. Now, I do want to say, any veteran listening to this, it does not mean you have to wait for 2 years. We have veterans that will call tomorrow and we will serve them in 5 months because it just worked in their lifestyle. They were able to come in for the 5 weeks. They got their paperwork in. We've served some veterans within 2 months. So don't think that there's no hope because of the waiting list. Calls, go to northwestbattleblaze.org, fill out the application, look, ask for help. We want to serve you. Second of all, I want to serve our veterans at the highest level. And right now, we serve, last year, we served 43 veterans with service dogs. I mean, do the math at $25,000 a dog, but we don't have a training facility. I have my for-profit business, and we have our place where our dogs live and they're taken care of, and they have fields to run in, and they have what they need. But when our veterans come and stay for 5 weeks, we want to be able to put them up in housing. Right now, they're dispersed. They're either staying in their trailer, they're staying in a hotel, they're staying with family. But I want to be able to house all of those veterans underneath one roof. I want a chef to cook them breakfast and cook them dinner so they can sit around the table as a unit and as a team, because they are. We serve all conflicts. Some service dog organizations only serve post 9/11. Well, what about our Vietnam veterans and our Korean War veterans? They deserve to be served. In fact, our 100th service dog went to a Vietnam veteran that he says, he'll tell you, I started living my life again once I got Bomber, my service dog, And
Oh,
so, but I want to be able to serve them and have it not cost them money. We can't pay for that. We've put all our money in the dogs because I'll tell you, a lot of people, they don't want to pay for salaries and they don't want to pay for a building. But we need to be able to serve our veterans like that. So we need somebody to say, hi, I'm going to pay for your building. I'm going to pay for a huge house for your veterans to be able to spend the night, and a man cave and a she shed for the females. And so we can serve and take away that burden. But we also need a training facility. Right now, we have Vietnam veterans right now in the rain in the Northwest, and they are walking their dogs in an acre fenced grassy field. They're walking with canes. They're walking with walkers, doing the tests that they need to do in the rain. Last year we had a storm. It was 18 degrees. Well, we can't just cancel. These people have come across the nation to be here for 5 weeks. We're going to get it done. My instructors were out there shoveling on our pavement, shoveling a huge path through snow and ice in 18 degrees so our veterans could walk and not be walking on the ice. We get it done. COVID hit, we get it done. And the fact is that we need a training facility. We need a place to house our veterans when they come for 5 weeks. We need to make it easier. And even though it touches my heart when I see the perseverance and the courage of these men and women who, no matter what the weather, no matter how cold it is, they're in it. Now, I will tell you, where they house right now to get out of the weather when we're training? I have a horse stall. And we pack them in there. The dogs are laying on blankets and they're covered up, and we have restaurant heaters. And they're all bundled up for a class or for instruction before they go out in the rain or whatever it is. And I'd love to be able to serve them at an even higher level, and not just provide an excellent trained service dog, and then complete support for the life of that dog, recertifications, extra training, whatever they need. We are a family. We are there for them. But we would love to make those 5 weeks easier and get them out of the rain, get them out of the cold, and be able to house them the way we want to house them. And we need somebody to help us with that, because our option would be, when people donate money, we don't provide service dogs. We let our list grow, and we just continue to save money till we can pay for a facility. Well, we weren't willing to do that. In 13
yeah.
years, the money comes in, we put it in a dog to get a veteran off the list. That's what we've done. But we would love to be able to offer the rest.
How can people reach out and help?
So if people want to go to northwestbattlebuddies.org, it's spelled out. We have a monthly giving program called Operation Never Quit. And it's such a perfect name for the title, because our veterans don't quit. The veterans that come here refuse to be denied, and they aren't going to quit. They're not going to become a statistic. And so people can go to northwestbattlebuddies.org. They can join our monthly giving program. They will be set up with monthly newsletters. We have a hero's corner. You hear about what's happening. You hear from our veterans. It's a great way to stay connected at any amount of money that people want to choose to provide. If they go to northwestbattlebuddies.org, they can also do a third party fundraiser. If you have a company, you can rally your employees and raise money. We can come speak. We can have veterans come speak. People put us in their estates. We need people to put us, make part of your legacy saving lives by providing a life-changing service dog. But they can go, there's so many, and people can also raise our puppies. We have a puppy raiser program, and not everybody can do that in every state, but we have about 5 states that people can help raise our puppies and love a dog from 8 weeks to about a year, and just keep that dog safe and make it part of their family. And then it comes into our training. But there's so many ways that anybody that loves their freedom and the men and women that provided it, they can find a way to bring their own gifts, talents, and energy to Northwest Battle Buddies and help us provide life-changing service dogs to our veterans that are desperate. They're desperate for help. And we want to serve them at the highest level, and we need your help.